Right. So I'm Stefan Tompson, and I'm here as the host of a series of podcasts for the Institute of New Europe, based around the Three Seas initiative. And I'm speaking with experts from each and every single one of the 12 member states of the Three Seas. And today I'm speaking with an expert from Lithuania, with Dorota Sokolovska. And perhaps let's start the conversation with a little bit about you, Dorota. Could you tell us about you, your work, who you work for, and yeah.
Yes, of course, it's nice talking to you, speaking to you. My name is Dorota Sokolovska. I'm working for Eastern Europe Study Center. It's the main foreign policy analysis think tank based in Vilnius. We were founded in 2006, so we're quite young. Myself, I study political science at Vilnius University. I used to study in Paris, also international relations. And I'm working for Eastern Europe Study Center for now about 2 years and maybe some months. And I'm primarily in charge of projects which are focused on the Belarusian minority in Lithuania and in Poland. But of course, we now occupy the topic of Free Seas Initiative as a think tank, and we cooperate tightly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'm in charge of this, and thus I'm speaking to you today.
Amazing. So I think the first question I have is really just a little bit of a, if you could give us a brief overview of the economic situation in Lithuania, just give a little bit of background of what it looks like since transformation, who your sort of major trading partners are, and your position within the region. That would be just a brief overview, not sort of an in-depth
Yeah,
expert
yeah, yeah,
analysis, but
yeah.
just like a lay person's just kind of bird's eye view.
Yeah, of course. Since the restoration of our independence, I guess talking in economical terms, we had to cope with the very high rate of people migrating from Lithuania. So once we accessed the European Union, even before that, Lithuania as a country, economically speaking of its demographic, we had to cope with the problem that people were living. And now we can talk about some kind of development that people are starting to come back to Lithuania. And in last year was the first when the number of people who got back to the country was bigger than the number of people leaving. So it can kind of
Congratulations.
trying to catch up with our people, which of course is the main asset for the economy. You cannot have a good economy without people. And so now we're on the track of I guess changes, because together with catching up with our demographics, uh, uh, 3 year 4 or 5 years ago, from the initiative of our previous government, previous president Dalia Grybauskaitė, uh, our goal was the energy independence, which is also very important because we imported a lot of our energy from Russia,
Hmm.
and it was always understood as a political problem, which
Hmm.
we tried to solve. And with the SDG terminal in Klaipėda, our main port city, this energy independence become a more material and more real opportunity. And now we consider ourselves to be energy independent. We do not buy any energy from Russia. Even before the war, it wasn't something which was facilitated by the war. Still, one of the main, I guess, economical, in terms of economy, in terms of trade, Lithuania tries to balance its economy between very conventional and industrial companies, industrial trade, which also is important compared to other Baltic states, because Latvian and Estonian economy is more based on light manufacturing, on light industry. In Lithuania, it's different. We had Mažeikių Nafta, now it's occupied by Orlen, Polish company, oil
Sure.
company, which still is very heavily industrialized. We have a HEMA chemical industry, chemical company, which is also very big in Lithuanian terms. And we try to balance this conventional, high, like heavy industry with startups. and we are very proud of our several how's it called, startups which reached the point of $1 million
Unicorn.
unicorns. Yeah, we
Billion.
have some
It's $1 billion.
unicorns. Yeah. Vinted is a good example because it's an app which is
That's I see their ads all the time.
yeah.
I get a lot of Vinted ads. Yeah.
Yes, but they're quite popular in the region, and they are constantly broadening their audience. They are coming to the markets in different countries. Now they entered Hungary, I think, in this month. So Lithuanian economy is kind of in a balancing state. And in terms of trade, before the interview, I looked that up. And in fact, we trade the most with our neighbors, Poland and Latvia. To a lesser extent with Czech Republic, Czechia, and Estonia. But we still tend to remain in our regional bubble.
Sure. What about Germany? Is there what does that look like on the balance sheet? I mean, it's interesting because for all the other conversations, I mean, Germany recurringly came up as just like a very crucial partner.
If speaking about Germany in economical terms, it's not that important for Lithuania. Of course, we trade and we see that problem that some of the components, some of the smaller things we can buy and trade only with Germany. And in terms of like goal of diversification of your trade and your opportunities, some of the fields are more linked to Germany. But in Lithuania, Germany is mostly political / military partner, and we want to see it as a military partner, especially in the light of war. And now with talks about potential German battalion in Lithuania, Germany for us tends to stay as a military partner more than Germany one. Of course, when in last year we had a very interesting development in the relations between Lithuania and China, and Lithuania was banned from Lithuanian companies were banned from trading with China. We've lost a number of our German partners because German partners, they are cooperating with the Chinese, and they were afraid of those secondary sanctions, so they just left. Lithuanian partners just were unable to cooperate with them further. So I guess that in Lithuania still we link economics very heavily with politics. Maybe it's some of a feature of the small state, of the Baltic state, which we cannot have big companies working with our enemies politically. So we tend to carve our way between the partners we have, either in the European Union or NATO countries.
Yeah, it's so interesting because Lithuania's I mean their track record on generally on doing business with countries that infringe on human rights is really interesting in terms of, I mean, literally just that pushing out China, the 16 plus 1 or 17 plus 1. I always get it wrong. Is it 16 or is it 17 plus 1?
We left when it was 16 plus 1.
You left when it was
16. Now it's 14 plus 1. Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, also, and then winning that semiconductors contract from Taiwan. I mean, your track record on Taiwan's really, really interesting. And then your track record generally on Russia, and not just Lithuania, but the Baltic states, and taking that leadership role in the last few months, really. But could you tell me more about the transformation, the energy transformation? So since gaining your independence, the thing is the from a Polish perspective, it's interesting because obviously the Rzeczpospolita, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, we have that sort of ingrained in the back of our heads. We kind of think we know Lithuania, whereas in fact, I think we don't really know very much about the Lithuanians themselves, especially from a modern day perspective. And then there's the major difference between Poland and Visegrad countries and the Baltics, which is that we were basically satellite states, whereas you were incorporated into the Soviet Union. So that level of integration obviously was that much deeper in your countries. Could you tell me just a bit more about the transformation and how you managed to successfully wean yourself off Russian energy over the last decades or years?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I should say that I'm not a big energy expert, but from what I know,
Just
uh,
roughly.
yeah, it was a very uh, important and very lengthy political goal, which was supported by all the governments, because in Lithuania we have constantly changing government with from from regaining our independence. Neither party, neither coalition had been in the government for two,
Consecutive terms.
yes, for
Yeah.
2 terms. So um, although the parties are changing, although the coalitions are changing, uh, foreign policy and especially energy security, energy independence was something shared by all the governments. So it was possible to open the terminal in Klaipėda to diversify our energy producers to cooperate with Poland, of course, because something we now call strategic partnership with Poland wasn't something very obvious if if we talked with you maybe in 2008 or 2009, because it wasn't
Sure.
always very good relationship. Now since Orlen is the biggest, like it's the company which pays the most taxes in Lithuania, so it tells something about its size and its importance. So that diversification, I guess, was, and that transformation was in part ensured by this independent terminal. Like its name is independent, so it says a lot. And of course,
Yeah.
now we are
Absolutely.
in the progress uh, of of restructuralizing our electricity links with the northern countries, with Sweden mostly. So I guess it was possible because of the very wide consensus between the politicians and the public. Of course, it's not very easy. You can put it like that, but it's very obvious that we have to be independent and stuff. But after Belarusian events in 2020, after the war has started this year, we saw that, of course, trade with Russia was present to an extent. It wasn't an energy field, but since Lithuania served as some kind of a transfer ground for Belarusian trucks for Russian trucks going their way to either Klaipėda or to Kaliningrad,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to and Lithuania just understood that it's a transfer country, and it gained a lot of money from it. But from because of political purposes, was our goal was to stop it, and it was to an extent successful in terms of European sanctions. In terms it was not, because our goal was higher than it was achieved by the European sanctions. But still, I would say that energy wise, we have successfully cut our ties with the eastern countries. But in terms of sometimes trade and some companies which are still operating in Russia, and especially in Kaliningrad, it's still ongoing process of change.
Sure. And in terms of sort of moving on towards really the topic at hand, the Three Seas initiative, what is the sort of general attitude towards, if we had to break it down, say between the general population and the mainstream opinion, is it even present there? and then the political and the expert and the journalist class. What's the general attitude?
Towards the Free Seas Initiative now. Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I guess that politically wise, if we are speaking about political level and maybe even about the society, honestly, I have to say that it's not the most popular, not most important format. And sometimes formats, of course, like formats of European Union itself and NATO itself, they're different, but our main attention is focused on European Union and NATO, and it
Yeah, of
won't
course.
be
Mm-hmm.
otherwise. But speaking about regional formats, I guess Lithuania and Lithuanian politicians, they are just starting to understand the idea and the need for regional projects, and it sometimes it could coincide with Lublin Triangle, with this kind of with format, but uh, I would say that we are now trying to identify and to articulate our interests and our goals in the framework of the format, because we can't have it all. For us, it's too difficult, even in terms of the agenda, that we cannot occupy a lot of questions. They're not all relevant for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I see it on the governmental level that there is a and some kind of a rising awareness about the importance of this framework and the possibilities of this framework. So we are starting to see it as a possibility. If we're talking about governmental level, publicly, I wouldn't say that we pay a lot of attention for neither Three Seas Initiative or Lublin Triangle, or even if we, as a spectators, see what is happening in the Visegrad format. Um, I would say that publicly, if we see it as a closer cooperation with Poland, which is now in Lithuania, is starting to be perceived in a better light than it was before.
Could we? Yeah. Could you expand on that? That's I think a really interesting topic, especially for I mean, from my I mean, I believe most majority of the viewers will be Poles, so I think it's really really interesting from a Polish perspective.
I could say that even like objectively speaking, you can see and you can say that Free Seas Initiative is uh, powered and it's is led by Poland as its idea, and it's in
That was
its
actually going to be one of my questions. So you're really kind of anticipating where I was going with the questions. Yeah.
yeah. So I would say that it is seen that way.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's hard to say something about like nationwide society, because it's hard to say what they think about it. But when I am speaking to some governmental officials or to an expert, so other peers in other think tanks, it is seen as a very not the Polish initiative, but that Poland plays
A
very,
Polish-centric initiative, would you?
not the Polish centric, but led by Poland, like the leadership of this format.
But isn't this just as a sort of an ad vocem? Is it? Would you not say that also? I mean, just generally, by virtue of its size and by virtue of its GDP, in a sense, it has to have. And I think what you say is really interesting, because I know that from the Polish perspective and the perspective of Polish political elites, there is a very, very cautious approach of not having it look or be sort of led by Poland explicitly, in the sense of I think there's a really deep understanding in the Polish political class that the region does not want to see a sort of Piłsudski's intermarium vision come to life, led by Warsaw. So I know that from a Lithuanian perspective, this is particularly important because of our past history. But it is interesting to hear, because I actually, so I've asked this question to everyone, to all the other experts I spoke with from the
Yeah.
region, and there was yeah, I mean, everyone really sort of had a similar feeling of well, it's the Poles, it's Warsaw's leading this, it's Warsaw's behind this, Warsaw's pushing it, it's in Warsaw's interest, and I think that in all fairness, I mean, obviously we're the biggest country in the region, the most populous, but there is a genuine need, right, for that, for rallying that north-south axis and restoring the historical injustices that have left our region connected as a transfer zone between east and west rather than an integrated region, right? And that's kind of where I was going with this is that understanding of essentially that's where kind of we're going with this. Is that something that is kind of being voiced and articulated and presented correctly, or is that kind of not being presented well enough? It may well be that it's Warsaw's fault for not communicating properly.
I wouldn't say that this linkage between Three Seas Initiative and Poland's leadership in it and trying to power it up in the eyes of Lithuanian officials and Lithuanian experts is a bad thing, because we naturally understand that because of those things you have just mentioned, because of its size, because of its population, because of its GDP, it's natural that we as Lithuanians or Latvians or I don't know, Czechs won't be able to do so. And it's not just their scope, and we just deal with different kind of maybe things. I wouldn't say that it's bad. And I wouldn't say that it is viewed as a bad thing. Only maybe negative consequence of it is sometimes our understanding of our inability to catch up with the very high ambitions and high ideas, which maybe Warsaw sometimes tries to present and tries to state. And this very deep inside feeling of not able to catch up, I would say maybe it's present, but it is especially present this year, because in Lithuania we're trying to think about our not the presidency of the Three Seas Initiative, but being a host country and hosting a summit in Vilnius, because we haven't done it yet. But now we are so occupied with the NATO summit, which will take place in Vilnius next year. And it's very hard for our even bureaucratic system, and for which is very small compared to Polish one, to have two ideas in mind in one place. That yes, next year we have NATO summit, and then maybe we'll have Free Seas Initiative summit. So this proportional difference between Lithuania and Poland may have a negative effect of viewing Poland as a leadership in the project. But overall, I wouldn't say that now it's viewed negatively, or that we are angry that the Poles are taking their share, the biggest share, and stuff like that. It's in the light of very good relationship with Poland, which is very new thing.
And so you were saying that sort of about 10, 15 years ago, that relationship was much more strained. What happened in the last sort of 10 years? What happened in the last decade that changed the
our governments used to meet and 10 years ago and 15 years ago, but I guess that some kind of, not the political change in Poland and Lithuania, but especially when Andrzej Duda became president of Poland and Gitanas Nausėda became a president of Lithuania, they have some kind of even personal good ties. Sure. And it made a good influence on the governments, on the ministries in Lithuania. I wouldn't say that we have solved some historical problems, and we talked about Vilnius occupation, which is viewed by Lithuania as occupation, and maybe some different kind of opinions in Poland. There are a lot of historical things which remain untouched from both sides, because in Lithuania we're also trying to resolve some problems. The situation of Poles living in Lithuania which is viewed by Warsaw as one of the pillars of the relationships between Poland and Lithuania. Their situation is good, but it's still, there are some commitments which were not fulfilled by the Lithuanian government. There are still problems, but they now don't play that big role they used to play before. And the fact that our governments meet every half of a year, it's something, if you see from a historical perspective, it's something absolutely unusual. I couldn't say what happened.
Just to barge in, just a very short anecdote about, to put that into perspective. In the 1930s, relationships were so bad that we didn't have an ambassador in
Yes.
Lithuania, and diplomatic relations between the two countries were done via the ambassadors in Riga, Latvia.
Yeah.
I think that really says a lot about, how much things have changed. Yeah, crazy.
Absolutely. Comparing it like to the previous century, and even seeing in the 90s and early 2000s, it was different. I guess that very good analysis and very insightful analysis would be needed to say that what was the main cause of the change, and we would have to measure it and to see what was the main thing which changed the thing. But now, in the light of the fact that our relations are good as they have never been, naturally, and because of this, cooperation with Poland in the framework of Three Seas initiative is not seen as a negative thing, or as a something which would be some kind of a minus for us. And of course, the goal of connectivity between north and south is something, it's something new for Lithuania, but very desirable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that from all those three main goals of Three Seas initiative, infrastructure, energy, and digital connectivity, I would say that those first two are the most important for Lithuania, because we are feeling that we are kind of disconnected from the region of the Three Seas initiative, or even to the west. So trying to build up.
I mean, just even by virtue of your geographic location, right? Because you share a border with Latvia, with Russia, and with Poland. Whereas Poland has a more obvious gateway to the west, just by virtue of where it lies, right? So you kind of have that geographical position really is quite important in your. I mean, in how you
we have that
Suwalki
corridor, Suwalki gap, which is our gateway to the west. And we're still rather unconnected with even Poland. We don't have a direct connection with Warsaw still, but Via Baltica is taking its place, and Rail Baltica is still underway. But I would say that what is now being understood and what is now being worked on is infrastructure, which is very, very important. And I think that governmental officials, they're starting to see that through a Free Seas initiative it is possible to reach that goal. And of course, when I just checked our trade with Free Seas initiative countries in terms of economical force, as I said before, we trade with our neighbors because it's the easiest way to do so. Then we have the least trade with Croatia, which is just the farther country located from Lithuania. So even by this fact, seeing this connectivity between north and south may open for us many opportunities to regain and to gain some economical strength, and maybe foster some relations in terms of trade, in terms of economy, which were not possible to maintain without some infrastructural projects. So from what I hear and what I discuss with governmental officials is very clear, and this component of economical cooperation between the Free Seas initiative countries is becoming as important as geopolitical one.
And what would you say is the role that Lithuania should or ought to play, or would like to play, in the Three Seas initiative? And I think that question is that much more important in the context of what we've seen since Russia's full scale aggression on Ukraine, where we've seen Central and Eastern European countries, most of them at least, really step up and take on leadership roles in comparison to sort of those more established Western powers, those that dominate the European Union, be it France or Germany. And we've seen countries that are much smaller population-wise, economics-wise, I mean, much smaller military powers as well, actually kind of essentially in a small area. I don't want to sort of blow our own horn too much, but in a small area become sort of almost world leaders in a sort of metaphorical sense, right? At least definitely European leaders. So in the context of that, and in the context of what we've observed, what do you believe the role should be that Lithuania plays?
I think you mentioned a very important thing, because for Lithuania, especially this year, during the Riga summit of Free Seas Initiative, the fact that Ukraine was invited to join the format, and there were a lot of talks about the ways how we could help, how we could include that this decision is not only on the paper but in fact. It I would say reflects the ambition, and reflects the idea and the role which Lithuania would like to play, because Lithuania needs counterparts in her ideas of foreign policy, in her foreign policy, and Free Seas Initiative may be a way for her, for Lithuania. I say her because in Lithuanian and Polish it's the feminine word for Lithuania, to balance her very ambitious foreign policy goals, which of course very welcomed now in the light of the war, with to balance the very ambitious goals with maybe not that ambitious size and capabilities, to find the counterparts which could be the help, and which would share her ideas and her positions on some foreign policy issues. Of course, if we talked about China, it's different. But if we're talking about the very nearby located threat, which is with Russia and Belarus, which we border together with Poland, I would say that Lithuania's role should be trying to balance the component of foreign policy and geopolitics with the economical ideas. And if we do our homework in terms of infrastructure, and maybe more just political attention to the format, it would be important. And of course, what I would like to see as the Lithuanian role in the format is trying to maybe not take the leadership, but to cooperate more with the Baltic states, with Latvia and Estonia, because we don't have a lot of it. And I would say that it would be important for us to advocate for some kind of interests, or to formulate our interests, or even to apply for the projects at the Free Seas Initiative Investment Fund together, not unilaterally just as Lithuania, not necessarily with Poland, which is a lot bigger, but to try to cooperate more with Baltic states. And yeah, it may seem obvious, but it's not in the
It's
reality.
funny because actually, what I thought, I actually believed that there was much greater cooperation between. When one reads about the Baltics, one kind of has this vision of these three really kind of closely connected, closely cooperating states, and you've just sort of essentially contradicted that vision that I kind of took for granted. Really interesting to hear. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of from like foreigners or people who who just start getting in like they start getting to know Baltic states from the literature, from the some kind of cultural vision. They see Baltic states as one entity, and in fact
Almost.
we see ourselves as competitors, and we see ourselves as, yes, we are like three brothers, three
Yeah.
sisters, but we compete a lot, and it is not a very smooth way to cooperate. Of course, we cooperate on some maybe formats which are related to Nordic Baltic cooperation, because yeah, we have those like two sides that, yes, we are Baltics, and those are Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, but within we are not that much cooperating,
Mm.
and yeah, and maybe in the Free Seas Initiative framework it would be beneficial to cooperate more and to state some things as a trio, and not as a one country.
And if I see another role that I think you haven't mentioned, which is, I mean, from my perspective, is what I would really like to learn. And I think this isn't just a Polish thing, but I think this is speaks for the entire region, where demographics is a gigantic problem. Bulgaria has seen 25% of its citizens have left since they joined the European Union, which is, I mean, that is a mind blowing statistic. In Poland, we're talking about somewhere between, no one really quite knows what the official number is, but it's between 2 3, maybe even up to 4 million have left since 2004, since we joined the European Union. A number of those have certainly returned, but many have not. And interestingly enough, and perhaps obviously enough, those who have left tend to be on the lower spectrum of age, so they're in their prime, they're ready to work. A lot of them are very entrepreneurial, and they're having children abroad. So kind of, and this is not just a Polish problem; it's a Central and Eastern European problem. It's a regional problem. What, how did Lithuania do it? How did you? What happened?
I'm not sure what happened, because of course we tried to advocate for it, because even our foreign ministry have like a separate department for the work with the our for with our diasporas.
Sure.
Um, there is very interesting organization, Global Lithuania, which connects people from different country Lithuanians. But of course, you cannot say that one department or one initiative brought people back. Uh, to an extent, our educational system tried to prepare for it and to integrate Lithuanian children which were born abroad to Lithuanian system here, and to
Hmm.
advertise it. But I would say that maybe it, even because of our size, but in this case, our size was an asset and not a problem, because Lithuanian economical situation got much more better, and if you have some kind of profession, if you can work remotely, or you don't want to work very manual work, you don't have to now in Lithuania. It's easier to get a intellectual so-called work now than some manual.
Hmm.
So the those people who are coming back, these are not people who migrated because they had some lower less paid work, less paid jobs. They tended to stay abroad. Of course, part of those people, they are migrating and they work seasonally, like they go to work in winter or they go to work in summer, and the rest of the year they spend in Lithuania. But those families who came back to Lithuania with their children fully established,
Hmm.
they just saw that they can do business in Lithuania more easily than somewhere in the Western Europe. That they can, I don't know, manage and balance their work with their family life in Lithuania easily. I guess that a lot of even bureaucratic things which are easier in Lithuania than abroad, and the fact that it's quality of life in Lithuania is pretty good now. It's not that it was in 1995 or 96. So as we advertise ourselves that we are a good place to be, a good place to live, and
All my
for people
travels
who,
there really confirm that. It's a beautiful place, really outstanding.
yeah,
Yeah,
so for people who are born here and they just ask themselves a question: why have we left and why are we not coming back? Of course, it was easier for people who had married Lithuanians too, who had created
of
Lithuanian
course.
families abroad. Because if the family is mixed, maybe it's harder. But
The language, just like Polish, isn't one of the easiest ones out there.
yeah, yeah. But I guess the very fact that we just reinvented ourselves as a place good to work, good to live, good to be, and people who are very sentimentally who have a sentiment for Lithuania because it's their homeland. They just, okay, we're coming back, and
Litwo ojczyzna moja, as
yes,
as,
as Adam
as the bard
Mickiewicz
put it.
said, yes.
Dorota, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, we've just scratched the surface. As there's so many other interesting side topics around this, but that's
Yeah.
essentially it. Thank you so much for your
Mickiewicz
time.
quote is a very good thing to end the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your insights, and yeah, hopefully the cooperation keeps going in the right direction.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and finally we did it.